Raiders and the Buccaneers. We'll go back to the NFC South down in Tampa. Tampa wins this game 28-13. Top 5 graded Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game. Tyke Smith, their rookie corner, top of the list with a 90.9. Another rookie, edge rusher Chris Braswell with an 88.0. Offensive guard Cody Mock with an 84.0. Tight end Cade Otton, 81.9. Offensive tackle Luke Gadecki, an 80.2. Baker Mayfield in this game, a 65.8. On Las Vegas' side of things, safety Trayvon Merrick, very high score. 90.4 overall grade. Edge rusher Caleb Chason, a 79.9. Running back Sincere McCormick with a 76.8. Tight end Brock Bowers, a 70.0. Center Jackson Powers Johnson with a 70.0 as well. Aiden O'Connell in this game, a 48.6, but looked like he suffered a nasty lower body injury in this game. So edge is tough with them and their quarterback situation. Now Gardner Minshew out for the year. Didn't look pretty for Aiden O'Connell either. So looks like we're getting Desmond Ridder the rest of the way for the Vegas Raiders, but they lose this one. What's the stat that told the story here for you?
Really like the way that Liam Cohen called this game and how the Bucs handled this on offense. It was kind of a weird game too. Like you ever watch a movie but like you haven't watched it all the way through and you saw like the first 15 minutes and the last 15, you're like, okay, I get the idea here. That's what this game was, because the middle of it was really kind of a big lull. But Baker Mayfield on intermediate throws. The Raiders play a lot of cover 2, a lot of cover 3. That's what you're going to get out of them. They're not going to get in man a whole lot. Just they don't have the guys for it. We'll get into that in a minute. Intermediate throws for Baker Mayfield. 8 of 11, 175 yards, touchdown, 1 big-time throw, 85.6 passing grade. The one time he got impatient and tried to chuck the ball deep into the end zone, it got picked off. There was some pressure and things like that, but ball he shouldn't have thrown. This, for the Bucs, it was a classic thing of, we've seen them, I think, at their best this year. They run the football well. Yards after catch, big thing in Liam Cohen's offense. Intermediate throws through the zone coverage. Baker stayed in his best moments in this game. Very patient. Had a couple screw-ups and 2 turnover-worthy plays, I think it was. It was a strip sack and then, again, the deep ball into the end zone that was picked off. But I thought when he managed the game well, especially in the first and fourth quarter, he was drilling intermediate balls into these zone windows. And the Raiders, and then the checkdowns too, the Raiders play way, way, way off. I mean, they're the ultimate take what they give you defense. And the moments when Baker did that, that's when the Bucs offense moved forward. That's when they were scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. Bucs offensive conversions, I think, was the big stat that told the story. They were 1 for 1 on 4th down. They were 4 for 4 in the red zone. They were 3 for 3 in goal-to-go situations. I mean, this is a team that when you can have as much success as they do in those tighter situations, where we talk about, okay, converting in the red zone, why is it so important? Well, it's so important because not only are you you're getting 7 points instead of 3, but you're also proving that you know how to use your offensive pieces when space is more limited. Of course, when you're starting from your own 20 or your own 30, you got so much grass that the other team has to cover. Well, when you got the red zone, they've got the extra defender in the back of the end zone that they can work with, and it's more difficult to get your guys open when you're in the red zone. So anytime you have that success, not only is it like, yeah, okay, you're probably going to win the game, it's also a really good indicator that you got a really good play caller, a good play designer, a good quarterback who understands how to manage and throw the ball in those situations. And the Bucs were rolling in those really important areas of the field. My most impressive in this game was Rachaad White, the running back for Tampa Bay. 17 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. Also had 2 catches off 3 targets for 19 yards and a TD. Bucky Irving, who's had a fantastic last couple of weeks for this team, one of the best rookies from last year's draft class. He was suffering through like a hip and back injury during the week. He ended up playing, but he didn't play very much. And I think they held him out of this game once they went up pretty big early. They got kind of stagnant there on the offensive side of the ball, and it was like, all right, well, the Raiders coming back a little bit, they're hanging around a little, but I think they ended up pulling Bucky Irving because it's like, okay, well, we don't need you in this game. We've got Sean Tucker, we've got Rachaad White, and the way that Rachaad White, I think, it was nice to see, because I think a lot of Bucs fans that are on my timeline are saying like, hey, like Bucky Irving, he's RB1, you got to give him all the carries. Well, one, it doesn't really exist like that anymore. We're not talking about the Ricky Williams, Derek, well, I guess,
unless it's Saquon or Henry.
I guess Saquon or Derrick Henry. I almost said Derrick Henry's name, but like the Larry Johnson year, he's getting like 440 carries or something like that. Like, we don't live in that world anymore. It is a by committee rushing attack basically everywhere in the NFL outside of those 2 spots that you named. And so, whether you want to see Bucky Irving at the top of that list getting the most touches or not, you still need somebody else there. Rachaad White was sort of the RB1 coming into this season. He was the RB1 last season. A lot of people liked what he could be, but the run game in Tampa was just so poor behind that offensive line and that run design last year. It's a lot better this year. It's a lot more balanced, and I think we're seeing Rachaad White get to play some really good football because of it this past week included when they really needed him with Bucky Irving out of the lineup. What about you? What's your most impressive in this
I'll go up front. I'll kind of stay in the run game here. For the second straight week, your right guard, Cody Mauch, has put up his highest overall grade in his career. 84.1 overall, 80.2 run block grade. That's his career high as well. One pressure allowed in pass protection. You know what? Very quietly, all of a sudden, he's getting hot lately. 74.4 overall grade this season, and I like kind of watching the development of this Bucs offensive line because the last couple of years what it's really been is Tristan Wirfs is great, Luke Gedicke's great, the interior, we got a lot of work to do.
Last year was bad.
Last year was rough. I think they were bottom 5 in the interior offensive line last year. Now, Cody Mauch in year 2 at right guard, looking pretty good, getting a lot better. Graham Barton holding his own. It hasn't been spectacular. He's getting used to NFL play strength and bigger defensive tackles and things like that. But all of a sudden, you kind of look at either late this year or next year. If Graham Barton takes a similar step like this that Mauch has taken, you might be talking about an elite offensive line because I like a lot of the things that Barton is doing. He's just, I think he needs – it's almost like he needs a year in the weight room to kind of become a sophomore in the league and just kind of get up to that level of strength. And Mauch, I'll tell you what, you can see in his tape right now, really strong, really athletic. He can move. There was a play in this game. He got out on a screen. He was about 25 yards downfield. He was flying. I think the only thing for him with me is his hand usage is still a little bit funny sometimes, but the potential on this guy and what they talked about coming out of North Dakota State, it's starting to come out because he's super athletic. He can move, and he's really strong, and you know he's got a mean streak. So I think the development along the interior for the Bucs here is something to watch at the end of the season and even going into next season.
It takes some time. It takes some guys time to
It's a young guys.
You got to give him a little bit of time.
Absolutely.
Right? Most disappointing for me, the Raiders secondary. It's been bad all season. You talked about how they play a lot of off-coverage stuff. I think it's just because they know they don't really have the guys to get it done. DeCamerion Richardson, a 43.7 overall grade. Jack Jones, 55.8 coverage grade. Darnay Holmes, 59.1. Isaiah Polamalu, and the safety level, 37.7. I mean, it was a terrible day for basically everybody that wasn't Trayvon Merrick, to be honest. So, Raiders secondary, it's a major issue that they have to address this offseason, and to me, they were the most disappointing. What about you?
Same. I'm just going to throw one more stat at you. They are currently pacing to have the worst coverage grade as a team since the Lions in 2020. That's the worst in 4 years. It's tough,
That's bad.
It's just they give up so many. Like you mentioned, they play so far off because they don't want to give up deep balls, but they're giving up too much space. And the Bucs knew it. They're like, we'll just work after the catch and we'll be fine. And I mean, they give you easy access to the chains. It's hard to watch, right?
I do feel bad for Antonio Pierce because not that I think that he is doing a ton to elevate the team right now, but that's without a doubt one of the worst rosters, if not the worst roster in the NFL.
Well, this is what now they look like for the first half of last year before Pierce was made the interim coach.
And Pierce gave them like a little bit of a bump.
Right.
But
defensively mainly.
And I think it was almost more like motivation than anything. And so that's why it's like I'm not sitting here saying that I think that Pierce is like a coach of the year type of candidate. I honestly, I don't know what Antonio Pierce is as a head coach. But I think it's really unfair to judge him off of this year. Now, whether or not you want to say that means that he deserves to have another year with this organization, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into that because I don't know how different this team's going to look. But to say like, oh, Antonio Pierce isn't a good head coach because of this year, what are you going to do, man? This team stinks.
I go all the way back to what we said in the preseason.
Right.
When they intentionally made their options Minshew and O'Connell, and I go, this just isn't going to work.
And here's the thing. If Mike Tomlin, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, like if these guys are the head coach of the Raiders, sure, it's going to look better. Like it would look better. I'm not saying Antonio Pierce is like one of those guys, but maybe he could be a great head coach someday. I don't know. I'll tell you what, you're not going to learn anything from this year. Just horrendous. So it unfortunately like kind of feels like he's going to get fired at the end of the year because it's been that bad for the Raiders. But I feel bad for the team.
I think part of it is going to be clean start with a new quarterback.
100%. But it's situations like this that are why Ben Johnson goes, no, I'm good actually.
Yep.
It's situations like this because I don't know if Antonio Pierce ever gets a head coach job after this, because people are just going to point to, well, we probably thought you were just a DC anyways. You did get a shot as a head coach, and it was bad, so we're not going to give you another one. And that sucks. That when you're not in like the boys club of head coaches, and obviously like minority head coaches, there's a lot of things that go into that as well, a lot of unfair things that go into that. And so I feel bad for Antonio Pierce. I really do.
I don't think there's a coach with this roster. I don't think there's a coach in the league winning with this.
I agree with you.
They got set up with Minshew. He got set up with Minshew and O'Connell, and Luke Getsy is his offensive coordinator, and that didn't work in Chicago, and they go and hire him anyway. I don't really know at this point how the Raiders could have succeeded this year. So, fast track to Drew Sanders, I guess.
Drew's in the chat saying Jacksonville. Like, as if I think he's saying in terms of like worst roster in the NFL, Jacksonville's roster is better than the Raiders.
Trevor Lawrence alone makes their roster better than the Raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think their roster is way better than the Raiders, which I think goes to say how bad of a job I think Doug Peterson has done this year, which is wild.
There's that too.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.